What do you think, Nick, are some of the biggest like if you could dispel like the top two rumors in your situation, or the top couple of mistruths, what would they be?
Well, there's one in the chat. Donovan says Nick is a child neglector at minimum. We're not charged with child neglect. We're not accused of child neglect at all. Actually, that's not a concern of the state in regards to us at all. Which again, this all comes from there's this big gap of information that occurs because the state has what it initially has, and then the state has its case that it builds over the course of things. And we're not accused of that. In fact, the state is pretty clear. It's pretty obvious from, their observations and their interviews with us, with the children, with our family members, that isn't a concern of theirs at all. That the children love the hell out of us. We love the hell out of them. They have a full home of activity and a great environment to live in, that we're very involved with them. And like people have built a narrative based on these initial reports that came in, but those reports were ignored. Initially, they were used as a basis for a search warrant, which that has its own issues to potentially hammer out, but those weren't actually the basis of anything involving the children. Our children were removed due to an emergency placement because, again, there's a statute that says that if there's a controlled substance in a home, the child is presumptively in danger. So
Did you know that could happen?
Did I know that could happen? Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a statute. Like, I think your question is a weird one to answer because there's an implication that like we're violating that statute, but
Yeah.
the state has to prove that we intended to violate that statute.
Okay. I think I'm just such a prude. Like I almost wouldn't even let my friend hold my baby because she had been like smoking cigarettes. I'm like, did I not go?
It's interesting when you really get down to like what the state considers like child maltreatment and child neglect, and when you put rules down on paper, they often don't make sense. And this is the boon and bane of the family court system and the juvenile protection system, is that often you get nonsensical results. Like you can have people who are consistently intoxicated, or they have a home filled with like nicotine smoke, for example, and that won't be child endangerment. And it's like, well, I mean, that's probably more dangerous than a lot of situations children are in when we get down to it. Or you can have, they'll say, for example, you can't have a controlled substance in your house, which sure, that makes sense. That's a sensical law, but there's a whole bunch of substances in your house that are perfectly fine to have that are as dangerous or even far more dangerous to children, like bleach, for example. And you don't get arrested for having like a thing of bleach in the wrong place, even though that would be more dangerous to children than for example, a child stumbling across marijuana or something in one of the states where marijuana is legal or illegal. You have the whole fucking Tide Pod thing, right? Like the amount of toxic and dangerous chemicals that are in our house are actually like, there's myriad of them, but they're household chemicals. And we have an expectation that people handle those in a responsible way.
And you're like, look, we were just using the Coke like an OxyClean. Just
no, I'm not admitting to or saying anything like that at all. Not even as a joke, which it's unfortunate because it would be nice to joke about it, but it is really serious. Like it's serious for us. And we don't really, I'm a guy who likes to joke about everything, but this one I can't really find funny in regards to the kids, especially. And it's like, you want to be jovial about it, but it's difficult, at some point I'll get to, I guess. But the other misconception is that people think like, they think because you asked for like two two misconceptions. The other one is that people think that I'm not complying with drug tests and stuff like that, because again, there's a gap of information. And the reality is that ever since the county actually asked us to do drug tests, we've turned in clean drug tests. And they don't have an unclean drug test. So there's a problem. There's a problem with that narrative for them. People think also that we were drug tested like when we were arrested. They didn't do anything like that. They have misunderstandings about like procedure and what happened. They're like, oh, they must have arrested them and tested them, and they tested positive for everything. It's like, no, actually, they didn't test us at all. They didn't even ask.
Wow. Okay.
Which is weird. It's weird that they didn't. Like, I would assume that they would, and they could have secured warrants to to get or a judge's order or whatever to get drug tests from us. They just didn't do that. And so once the county asked us for drug tests, we complied immediately. We've been complying ever since. People think that we paid we posted bond. Both Lady Rackets and I posted bond for unconditional release, but that was the criminal case. The family case, we've been under conditions for quite some time. And, people may have questions about why you post bond. There's a ton of good reasons to post bond, depending on how long your case is and what you have to do. If you're going to be under, this is just general advice for people. If you have a substance charge in Minnesota and you go and you get arrested, they're going to release you. And if they release you on conditions, the condition is going to be complying with random drug testing. Well, that random drug testing is going to cost you $75 a shot. So if you're going to be on random drug testing for several months, then you just have to do a math formula of how much your bond costs and how much you're going to pay in drug testing. And so we were arrested May 23rd. Our first hearing is August 21st, our next hearing. And then after that, it could be several months past that. Well, if you're going to be on drug testing through that program, you're going to pay $75 every 2 to 4 days. Per person. So if you're going to do that, well, if you get tested 10 times, it's $700, $750 a month. If you get tested 10 times in a month, which is a very kind of normal average outcome. And so if you pay your unconditional bond, if you're going to be on release or whatever for, 3, 4, 5 months, it starts to become a pretty easy cost proposition to say, well, I can pay, for us, it was $5,000 up front. So you pay $5,000 or you're going to pay more than $5,000 as you go through this thing.
It's like gas when you get a rental car.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Like there's a time where paying for the gas up front can be very advantageous. Because you don't want to pay for it on the back.
Screw me. I've never done it. I'm just like, I know your tricks.
Usually get a pretty good price on the gas.
And also they want you to pay in advance for the tolls. And I don't trust that either. I'm like, you don't know where I'm going. You don't know what I'm doing.
Okay. I haven't seen the toll one, but I haven't rented a car in a while. So.
Yeah. I'm a big car renter.
But yeah, so people assume that because we paid for our unconditional bond in the criminal case that we haven't had drug testing and we haven't complied or some other nonsense. And it's like, no, I think the first drug test we turned in was at our hearing on June 7th. And then after that, we were ordered, it was June 6th or June 7th. After that, we were ordered to comply with drug testing. And we have like the entire time. And shocker, they're all clean. It's amazing. But yeah, people assume that we're just sitting around, and that restriction's great. Like that includes alcohol and everything. You can't do anything. It's amazing.
How fun. just your thoughts. You're alone with just your thoughts.
Just your thoughts and your sweet tea.
Have you seen your kids since all this went down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see our kids, right now we see them 5 times a week, and they'll be back in our house really soon. So,
oh wow, okay.
Again, it's another misconception. People think, again, they've created this fiction in their head that the state thinks that we like abused our children or that we did anything other than the state's position is that there's this statute that says this happened. And again, without making any admissions or denials on stream publicly, that's the state's position, is that we're charged with this under this statute. All of the other stuff that people have created about like child endangerment, child neglect, child maltreatment, that's not in the state's case. They don't believe that that's happened. And guys, they talk to the kids, they talk to fucking everybody, you know. And what they find in our case is pretty simple. The community knows that we're very involved in our kids' lives. Our kids love the hell out of us. Our kids are all in very good health. No one saw any signs or symptoms of any of the stuff that the internet has created. So, you know, we're on track to get our kids back relatively quickly for this county, which is, in my opinion, way too long. But that being said, you know, they'll be back really soon. Sorry to dispel that one, guys, but we're not charged with the things that people on the internet have decided that we have, and we're not even accused of them. Not just that we're not charged, it's that they don't have any information leading to the conclusion that that our kids are mistreated. So we've seen them throughout this entire process, and it's just been building towards the state being confident that there's not some substance in the home. It's like, that means the state can come and look, and they do. They did yesterday. It was great. You get to give the state a nice tour of your house whenever they want.
Gives you a reason to vacuum, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, again, there's a lot of I guess headcanon that's out there that people have, and it's incorrect. And like, I wish I could just correct it all, like all the time. You want to, when you like read about it or hear someone talk about it, or you get a message and you're like, I wish I just could sit there, but you can't sit and do it. One, that can get really problematic for your case if you're talking all the time. Two, you just don't have time to address it all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That clears up a couple of things. From Slow Mo Savage Nick, do you want to clarify? Did you say bleach is just as dangerous as cocaine?
I said bleach can be far more dangerous than lots of controlled substances that are out there. I didn't make any specific claims, but yeah, well, kids drink
much
bleach.
harder. It's much harder to snort.
Yeah,
You'll drown.
It's easier to drink, though. Ask kids what they're better at, snorting or drinking a substance. Like, honestly, think about it for a second. I know it's uncomfortable, but like, snorting a substance and drinking a liquid are two different things. Kids drink bleach and they die from it. Like, that happens.
But I guess you'd have to go under a sink, open a child-proof container, and then drink it, versus like if there's just a substance on a table and it's just there, you could go touch it.
Yeah, again, that's two big assumptions, right? One
Yeah.
is the assumption that the one substance is out and available. The other is the assumption that bleach is not out and available, that it is in a childproof container, that container is closed, that container is under a sink, that there's no fault in it, that there's no holes in the container. Like, generally speaking, we do keep a lot of things in our houses, we collectively, that are extremely toxic to people. We actually don't really keep bleach in our house. We don't use bleach as a cleaner. We use other things than bleach, but it's like, we don't. It's a risky substance to keep around. So it's I know it's again, you have to make assumptions to get to a thing, and when you make those assumptions, you start adding facts to the situation. It's like,
yeah.
Is a childproof container of bleach properly stored more dangerous than a pile of cocaine sitting on a table? Well, no. But that assumes those two things are the variables we're talking about, right?
And only one gets your whites white. Yeah. Okay. From Sean, just joining the stream. Sorry if you've said it already, but how did this start? How the hell did this get to a warrant? I'm hoping you beat this, Nick.
Well, you can find out how it got to a warrant by reading the affidavit that was filed for the warrant request, and you can make your own determination as to how it got to a warrant. I can't really comment on that too much, but remember that the entirety of how a warrant gets approved has to be contained within the affidavit for the warrant, and that affiant signs that affidavit and executes it under oath. So if they misrepresent things or fail to represent things in there, it is technically perjury. But you'll have to determine how that got to a warrant at all. And I would encourage people to read the affidavit and ask themselves the basic question: what about the affidavit? And this is just a good exercise in general. What about the affidavit says that they will find evidence of crime on the date that the warrant is executed? And if you find that they've met their burden, then the warrant is good. If you find that they haven't met their burden, you have to ask why. But those are things that you guys got to do for yourselves. I can't tell you the answers to that.
Tedpool says, you know why it doesn't matter if my home is searched? I don't use drugs and there's none in my house.
You know what's interesting is that you may not know what's in your house.
Ooh, that's why you got to do a spring cleaning.
You may not know what cops bring into your house either.
You think cops brought stuff into your house?
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
Generally speaking, people are like, oh, I'll consent to a search. Everything's fine. Ask a bunch of people about how well that went for them, because there's plenty of stories out there where they didn't know that something was in their house or their car or on their persons, and they go to jail for it. Like,
yeah,
don't ever consent to a search. Like that, legally speaking, there is no benefit to consenting to a search. If the cops want to search you, they will, and you should not resist them. Right? Go home alive or go to jail alive. Don't die, but don't consent. Make them do their job. Make them have probable cause. People consent to searches that the cops did not have justification for all the time. Some people get burned. If you've lent your car to anybody, are you 100% sure your car doesn't have something in it? You're probably not.
if it's me borrowing your car is going to have more gas when I return it to you, because that's how I roll.
Yeah, it's but if people have been in your house, are you 100% certain they didn't leave something in your house? Do you know? Is always a good question, especially because things like possession crimes, this person's referring to having drugs or whatever. Possession crimes require the intent to possess the drug. You have to know and intend to possess the substance that is identified as a controlled substance. The cops have to prove that. And so if you consent to a search and they find it, well, I mean, then you're defending yourself. If you don't consent to a search and they don't have the cause for it, then, hopefully they don't do it. But again, cops will always search you if they want to. You should not resist that, but you should not consent to it, because that may be a great defense for you going forward.